Loneliness may be a heavy weight in the heart, especially when people undertake a spiritual journey. Most individuals in everyday life fill their schedules with deadlines and tasks, often rushing past any deeper questions about meaning and purpose. Those who would start looking for answers from beyond superficial levels may suddenly feel a gnawing distance between themselves and the old routines or social circles that once gave stability. A greater sensitivity arises with the turning of the mind inward, and with it, the possibility of being cut off from the usual streams of conversation and connection. Rather than a feeling at one single sad moment, loneliness in this context could pertain to quiet evenings, early mornings, or at times of contemplation regarding some of the deeper questions of life. There is often a feeling of alienation when one breaks out of their comfort zone, perhaps into new, unknown practices of meditation, mindfulness, or even prayer. Such quiet activities can easily be thought of as dull or strange by those who count success in terms of external achievements. Meanwhile, a person on a spiritual path may catch that something inside them shifts, an inner call that moves at a rhythm other than normal social life. The realization has a cost: the tearing apart at the seams in one's current relationships. It seems as if those near become distant, the gulf is difficult to bridge. While the feeling of loneliness can certainly be uncomfortable, it often signals a stage of deep transformation. It becomes an invitation to reassess old assumptions and patterns more clearly and let go of what is not truly fulfilling. For many people, it's also an opening into discovering a new breed of community, one that enables inner growth without demanding anybody compromise their authenticity. In and of itself, embracing loneliness can be a kind of spiritual practice. It reveals the longing for connection, not just superficial contact but contact at the level of the heart, grounded in values held in common. Yet it simultaneously pushes one to consider how one might extend that contact to include aspects of oneself that have been shunted aside or suppressed. Rather than an impediment, loneliness can become a trusted guide toward fresh avenues of self-awareness and empathy. Examine how to endure loneliness and isolation while respecting each person's life journey. This act of embracing such solitude may bring them to the realization that the experience of being alone is what opens doors toward community, within and outside. Understanding why loneliness arises on the spiritual path: for most people, the word loneliness implies the absence of companions. Yet spiritual loneliness can be experienced even when friends and family are present, but the inner world begins shifting in ways that don't lend themselves to words. Probably a long-enjoyed hobby no longer appeals, or conversation about inconsequential matters is exhausting rather than energizing. This may include a desire for deeper conversations on topics regarding purpose, morality, or the nature of consciousness with others who do not have the same sense of curiosity. It's just as common that relationships are put to the test as people grow and change. In committing to introspection, one may find that some friendships were founded on shared fears, gossip, or distraction. As old habits fall away, individuals who bonded over them might feel left behind or rejected. The seeker may then wonder if, by growing, they somehow bridged a separation from loved ones. It is an emotional puzzle that can stir guilt, worry, and second-guessing over the whole decision taken to follow a spiritual calling. In addition to this internal friction, there's an external component. Modern society often prizes efficiency and tangible achievements. Slowing down to reflection, meditation, or any mindful act for people who believe productivity means never-ending action may look frivolous or even self-indulgent. Rather than receiving praise and recognition in choice and pursuit, more in life than materialistic goals could mean skepticism or even ridicule. Approach a spiritual explorer. It is not a surprise that loneliness may set in, simply because it feels difficult to find people who understand the new priorities that are taking shape. Loneliness on a spiritual path doesn't occur in a vacuum. It interacts a lot with layers of emotions that have waited for a long time to surface. In many cases, these layers include old wounds that were never given proper attention. Childhood insecurities, fears about worthiness, and past memories of rejection come to the front. When people take up the journey of self-awareness, they suddenly realize how different earlier coping mechanisms, such as constant socializing, binge-watching entertainment, or focusing solely on career goals, serve to keep these deeper feelings at bay. and this could make solitude all the more weighted in feeling, as these masked emotions rise. No distractions can clear the way to raw confrontation of what hurts and why. On one hand, this is a precious opportunity for healing long-neglected past wounds. On the other hand, this can be painful and requires some vulnerability and waiting. Loneliness in this view is that teacher and classroom in the making, creating the conditions whereby the soul intuitively knows what area of its being needs further development. Certain spiritual traditions consider the times of solitude indispensable steps on the path toward enlightenment. Be it silent retreats or hermitage, stepping out of the bustle brings insights not accessible from within a crowd. Of course, not everyone needs to live in a monastery. What matters is how willing one is to pay attention to the deeper currents of emotion and thought that arise during times of quiet. This can be a daunting process, but also a transformative one, as it paves the way for a more authentic connection with oneself and, eventually, with others. There is rarely time to stop and notice what we value, and thus, those who would take the time to think may be lonely out of the rush. Maybe they start to question the pursuit of status or possessions, and perhaps small talk isn't satisfying anymore. At that realization, this can be lonely times when others seem quite content in discussing the latest happenings or gossip. Along with this comes a very strong urge to share the new insights with someone who can truly understand them. In this hope lies also a danger of disappointment, if the person tries to discuss spiritual experience with what may be called uninterested people, or with the ones who bluntly dismiss the conversation as impractical. Eventually, this chasm between the inside-seeking reality and outside world can become even larger. If that gap is not addressed, it may give rise to a deep sense of alienation, which can be painful and confusing. Yet, there is a way of bridging that gap. For some, their refuge may be an online forum related to meditation, holistic healing, or philosophical search. Others would find local gatherings, retreats, or workshops that congregate people sharing a passion for personal and spiritual growth. Such shared experiences are reassuring, especially those that are built upon open dialogues and listening. It soothes the sting of isolation to be able to find at least one meaningful connection and reminds the seeker they do not walk alone wanting more than the surface of daily life. Following steps can be taken to relieve isolation. Coping with loneliness really requires a balance that respects both the need for solitude and the human need for companionship. While it is necessary to develop an excellent relationship with an inner world, it is not moving away from community but rather pruning relationships and activities that no longer serve evolving values. It is a good idea to practice periodic checking with oneself. Setting time to be quiet and consider feelings, goals, and stresses may show a pattern that reinforces loneliness. Possibly certain routines or environments can be recognized as draining while others create connectedness. By naming what gives spirit, decisions about investments of energy are more congruent. Other modes could be physical exercise or the induction of physical movement as a means of inculcating a sense of bodily presence that might help minimize the tendency of anxious thoughts often accompanying feelings of loneliness. Yoga, Tai Chi, or even an extended walk can also help in anchoring the mind and establishing a soft connectivity between outer action and inner awareness. Another way self-care is nourished may involve basic acts like the preparation of healthy meals, readings of inspirational literature, and gratitude practices. These choices remind a seeker that, while outside companionship might be fluctuating, there is always an opportunity to cultivate a compassionate relationship with oneself. In making new friendships or bringing freshness to stale ones, there is much help from authenticity. Often, instead of striving for relationships that are hard to get together, it is rewarding to go in search of places where good conversations would flow more organically. Book clubs debating spiritual texts, local groups getting together to meditate, or creativity workshops that permit self-expression. Places like that can become an oasis for an individual who finds him or herself isolated in usual settings. It is not about deserting old friends or family. It is rather about recognizing that different kinds of relationships serve different needs in one's life. There are those who have never and will never understand the motives behind your spiritual search, and that's okay. What is most important is allowing room for new contacts where curiosity is fostered and mutual respect abounds. Acts of service can encourage an unplanned method of fellowship, too. Community volunteering, animal shelters, and environmental cleanups are some of the ways people can turn spiritual intentions into action. In most cases, such efforts draw to themselves people with a similar desire to do good in the world. Even when the individuals encountered in these settings do not share the same spiritual beliefs, working together for a cause that is higher than personal gain can evoke a sense of unity that can combat feelings of isolation. How to embrace the healing potential of solitude? The absence of the constant chatter creates a rare chance to rediscover what is truly important. While the word loneliness does have a decidedly negative tone, its cousin solitude can be an extremely enriching experience. It's in these quiet spaces that many find the time to re-examine some fundamental questions of meaning, purpose, and legacy. Writing in a journal, meditation, or even just sitting in silence can bring clarity hard to attain amidst a crowd. Another potent measure to be in solitude without feeling alone is with nature. The rhythms of forests, mountains, or oceans can evoke a sense of being undeniably connected to something bigger. Here, the line between isolation and oneness becomes blurred. Many traditions tell stories of saints, shamans, or mystics who went into the wilderness to communicate with the land. While not everyone can be away from home for extended periods, even a short outing could renew one's appreciation for the interrelatedness of all life. People feel lonely because they think nobody else feels this longing for deeper truths. In reality, a wide range of communities exists to support spiritual exploration, some highly formalized, others growing up around blogs or online forums where like-minded individuals exchange stories, advice, and encouragement. Shared spaces are invaluable in those moments when loneliness seems about to outweigh hope. Reading about others' experiences or joining virtual gatherings helps to diffuse that feeling of being in uncharted waters. For anyone seeking to continue support and insight, a subscription to some sort of frequent inspiration is a great move. Subscriptions connect the reader with updates, creating shared momentum that may help an individual stay with spiritual growth amid the busy phases of life. Loneliness and isolation sometimes accompany the accompanying path of spiritual exploration, as it is out of step with normal interests that generally prevail in everyday society. However, other feelings can be embraced as part of the process that one undergoes in questioning old beliefs and living a life more genuinely. Such times of isolation can serve as catalysts to healing and self-discovery by revealing emotional layers obscured through everyday routines. Finally, finding healthy ways to cope includes balance between solitude and community involvement. Meditation, journaling, walks in nature, each of these inner works fosters deeper insight into oneself. Yet service activities or membership in small spiritual gatherings remind that while each journey is unique, substantial parts of them can be shared meaningfully. Integration of both solitude and connection leads toward wholeness. Feeling disconnected from usual circles isn't always permanent. With horizon expanding come new relationships. As time goes on, people may find out that loneliness eventually guided them toward a more compassionate bond with themselves and with others. The road may be rough, however, the process uncovers a far more subtle reality. Real companionship grows from honesty and a sympathetic, empathetic willingness to stand firm in one's quest for truth. So, by naming loneliness as a trial and teacher, one is open to a deeper level of belonging that truly nourishes the soul.